Like I had this mentality, like I wanted to win. I wanted to win at this fight. I wanted to show you that I was right. I wanted to like get my point across. And then I realized it's like, really, Vivian, like, do you want to win this fight or do you want to win your man back?
Welcome to the God Money and Sex podcast. My name is Raul Velasquez. I'm here with my beautiful co-host,
Vivian Velasquez.
And today is a very exciting topic because I believe that it's going to bring a lot of value to every single man that's listening to this podcast because we always don't have our shit together. Well, let's be honest. We're a work in progress. We're constantly evolving. We're constantly growing. So even right before we started this podcast, I wanted to talk about something else. She wanted to talk about something else. And at the end of the day, we have to get our shit together to be able to bring you the most valuable content that we have. So what's the topic for today?
And
I'll let you choose. All right. So we're going to talk about today.
And I think that's the cool thing about us is like we want to talk about something we're potentially like prepared, but at the same time, like life is so beautiful. You just like let it take its course. But what I did want to talk about, and I think will bring a lot of insights, even for us, is like how do we handle criticism? How do we handle feedback from our spouse? And do we even have the space? Do we create the space for it?
And I think the most important part of it too is how do you get how you get your partner to be on the same page? Because that's, criticizing is part of just asking for feedback. At the same time, how do we get people to be on the same page? I mean, you and I have worked together in the past. We're building, different businesses now, but at the same time, we were not always on the same page. We were not always seeing eye to eye. We were not always in an agreement. And most of the time too, we're not always on the same page. You and I are raising our kids. We're not on the same page sometimes of what things are important, even with time. Like, when I have a different view of time. I look at time more of an abstract thing. I know I could create time if I'm able to be able to bring more to the table. But you look at time as like shit. If we're not here on time, then you get pissed off. If we're late, you get pissed off. I'm the opposite. I'm like, I could be late to some place because I don't operate in the same time frame as most people. So
that's right.
So let's give some insight. So it's three things I think that as a man we need to really accept criticism and give a woman feedback. Is number one is don't take shit personal. So even as silly as it sounds, just this podcast, the moment that you started giving some feedback, there's part of me saying, fuck, I want to talk about this, or, I don't want to do this. I don't want to talk about something else, but it's not personal. We got to be able to get out of the situation, get out of the conversation and accept the feedback from your woman, from people. Even as I look at this as a business owner, like if we're taking everything personal, we're never going to grow in business. If we take everything personal from our wives, we're never going to grow. If we take everything personal from my kids, we're always going to have our feelings hurt.
And I think that happens a lot in relationships. Like we don't know how to handle that criticism. And like I said before at the beginning of the podcast, I said behind every criticism, there is a wish, especially for us women. Like there is something that sometimes we're not willing to say with words directly. We're kind of like there's just running around the bush, or like we are not being direct how you guys like to talk. And I think that's a big difference between man and woman. It's like how we talk. Sometimes it's like we have to put ourselves, or maybe we're not willing to put ourselves in this vulnerable place to actually say what we feel, right? So like, for instance, like what happened at the beginning of the podcast, like we didn't know what we were going to talk about. You wanted to talk about something else. But then why would it have been different if I said to you like, hey, I invested already some time. I looked into this. Our team has looked into it. This is something that could, potentially bring more viewers, whatever it is. It's like, why can we take it from there? And it's like, no, you take it personal. Automatically, like it's about you. And I know that's how it is for me. Like when we have a fight, or not necessarily a fight, but it could turn into a fight. Then it becomes like something that I did, something that like, it makes me feel like I'm not enough. And I don't want to go to that place because it's so vulnerable. And I think a lot of the times for us women, we're not willing to expose that part of us. And I get it. We don't feel safe. Like we can't always really expose that part of us because it's such a vulnerable space. But then again, if we don't, how that snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then just causes this big wall between partnerships.
I think the key here to, just listening to you is more of how you say it. And as a man, like, okay, I know that you invested some time. I know that we have this research, but what I'm feeling is that I need to get this other message out, and I feel like this will bring more value. But the way that you say it, the way that you bring it, the way that you frame it, I think that's the key for every single entrepreneur that listen to it. It's not what we say, it's how we say it that matters.
Yes.
So if you talk to your wife and your partner and said, okay, here, here's the reason why.
Yes.
I want to do this. Here's how this is going to help our family, help our business, help our team. If you give people a reason, the statistics show there's some research done that there was a line of people, and I think it was a Harvard study that was done that people asked, can I cut in front of the line? And more people were able to allow people to cut in front of the line if they had a reason. So some people came at, can I just cut in front of the line? They're like, no, you can't. But I said, can I cut in front of the line because I'm running late or because of this?
And it was also probably because of the tone that they used. It wasn't like they were demanding.
Here's what the research actually showed. It didn't matter the reason. It's just the word that says, because this.
I knew
or because that. So just the moment that you start framing it in a way like, can we do this because this is important or because this happened? And something happens in our brain that we just need a reason to agree with somebody. But if you just want to impose your will, you want to impose your word, or you want to impose what you want to create, then it just becomes friction. And I think that's when women start tapping into the masculine side of themselves, and then men have to tap into their masculine, and then you have
the conversation becomes very colorful. But I also think not to make, if we're trying to fix a problem or to, avoid a fight, I think also not make it so much about the person, but make it about the situation, right? So it's sometimes we focus so much on this is what you did, this is how, we're start pointing the fingers, but really can we focus on the situation instead of what the person has done? Because sometimes, a lot of the times, I feel for me especially, it comes from a place that I wasn't even aware. I do think sometimes because I let the rage take over, I let my emotions take over me, and the best part of me just absolutely disappears and it's no longer there. So I think if we would address the situation instead of addressing the person, then it makes such a difference.
And at the end of the day, if you start addressing the problem with a reason, then I think that a lot of women, from my experience coaching men, is you guys know how to pull our triggers. You guys know where to stick the daggers. So you use, whenever we don't do what you want us to do, then you use the other, if honey doesn't work, if you don't get it this way, you're going to get it through the guilt and the shame. Well, you didn't do this last time, or you were an asshole before, now you're trying to make up for it. So that becomes manipulation. That's when you know how to pull those levers, because again, when you're doing it because of you're not addressing the situation, you're taking it personal. The best way to avoid that kind of war is to not take things personal and start looking at the situation and see what's the best, not necessarily for me, what's the best for the whole.
And now another thing that you as you're talking, it makes me think how there's different situations, and when we fight and when we take in criticism, there's probably 2, 3, maybe 4 different scenarios. But in a relationship, you become you fight each other. You fight and one person fights and the other one flees, or both of you just flee, and then you just become resented towards the other person, and you don't talk for days, weeks, maybe even months. And I think if we get hold of that part and we know where do we fall in those 3 different categories, then we could figure out okay, well, this is how I react. What can I do better? And a lot of the times I would just automatically feel okay, I just need my space for days. And the stories that I would tell myself of what happened on the fight, I flee. I did not want to be the confrontation type. So then instead of the fight, I would be the fight, flee. And I would really make up some stories that were just so unreal in my head. And it was just that story just became so much bigger than it needed to be. So I think, we said this before too in another podcast, it's time doesn't really heal that fight. I think
you're great stories. Because you're great stories.
But you also need to know how much space your partner needs, because I know that I need some space to really process my emotions, and then come comfort me, and then come ask me questions, but don't do it right when I'm feeling so angry.
Well, I think that's so the second point to that, how to manage a situation like this, how to take feedback is know what fights to fight, know what battles to fight. And I think that's is key, because if I want to make this into a fight, if I want to make this into a big deal, like I think that we have to really choose our battles, pick our battles, because not every battle is worth really going to war for. Not every battle is we're going to make a big deal. And I think that we make it a big deal when there's a stack effect of all the things that have built up,
that
and
you
now
haven't addressed.
that we haven't addressed, that you have put underneath the rug, and then all of a sudden, like somebody says this, or your criticism comes as a punch, and then the wound comes out, and then now is a full-on war.
Yes, totally.
So pick your battles. Pick your battles. Not every battle needs to be a fight. That we're constantly either moving forward, moving backwards, or we're freezing. That's the fight, flight, or freeze.
Yes.
So if you're not addressing the situation, if you're not being heard, and I think that instead of really criticizing the person, it's just saying your truth, telling how you feel, and say, listen, it has nothing to do with you. This is what I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling rejected. I'm feeling judged. I'm feeling this. But I know most of the time that when we address this, like I know that's a trigger on me.
Yes. So you say that you're so good at taking responsibility.
And I ask, like, what is it about what you're saying to me? What is it about the situation that's triggering me?
Yes.
And how do I process it and not make it about you doing this to me, but me discovering something about myself?
And that's like the amazing part about you, because it wasn't always like that. Like you didn't have those tools to actually like, oh, let me see what happens to me. Like, no, before it was like explosive. We would be at each other's throats. But now it's like it's such a like it's a different man in front of me that is able to take responsibility for the things that, like you said, trigger you. Like I know that I could create it, but I am not, like I don't have that much power. And I think once we understand that, like we're not here. Do you want to win the fight, or do you want to win in love? Do you want to win as your spouse? I think that was a big difference for me. It's like I always I had this mentality, like I wanted to win. I wanted to win at this fight. I wanted to show you that I was right. I wanted to like get my point across. And then I realized it's like, really, Vivian, like, do you want to win this fight, or do you want to win your man back? Like, do you want to win having a relationship? And for me, that was like a huge wake up call.
Do you want to be right, or you want to be loved? And that's constantly, what I say to myself. Do you want to be right, or you want to be loved?
You say that a lot.
So I'm constantly like just repeating that in my mind, because it doesn't mean that I'm right or wrong. It's just, do I want to, do you have to be wrong for me to be right? Or can we both be right and agree with it? So that's the part where like, okay, that's your point of view. Do you see? So one of the patterns that we go through all the time is that you asking me to do things in the house.
Yeah. And
I'm going 100 miles an hour. So some of those things that you asked me to do, in my mind, they're not as important as some of the things, right?
And I get it.
So then the other day, you text me and you said,
I'm mad.
Like, sometimes I want to punch you in the fucking face. Like I asked you to do the water, to put the water in the cooler or something like that, and now I have to do it. And you wrote me a long thing with emojis and with a mad face. And in the past, I would have been like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Like, I have to do all these things. That's not my priority right now. I could pay somebody to do it." So I would have reacted.
You would have said
way.
that, yes.
But then all I did is just laugh, because it didn't trigger me anymore. I just sent you
just so you know, you didn't even reply.
I did reply. I said, I'll make it up tonight. I said, thank you for the feedback.
Oh, I don't think it came through.
I look at your phone right now. Look at your phone right now. Let's see what I reply. I'll look at my phone right now, and I'll tell you exactly what.
But listen, let me tell you, until you look for that, let me just tell you how that makes me feel. Like, and I get the fact that sometimes men are not in the moment or listening to what we're saying, because we have this different operating systems, and we could talk about that in another podcast, because it's like a whole different story. But if I asked you for something when we were, in a calm space, and I asked you and I said, babe, like all I want you to do is to bring this crystal rock.
Yes, it's different.
Right?
It's different.
But I've asked you that before. That's the thing. Like I've taken the time, and I've actually made the space, and I've asked you for it, because here's the thing. When I have to go get the water, one is outside. Two is like right after I finish my ritual, and I'm like so in my feminine, and I'm like so delicate and fragile, and I'm like so like, oh my gosh, my body's so alive. And then I come downstairs.
There's no water.
There's no water, and I feel like I'm a drying fish. And then it's like, well, I curse you out like that moment. Like I
So
was
here,
so,
yeah, let me read the text that you
so
sent
mad.
me. You sent me this. I don't ask you for a lot, but when you don't put the water refill, I want to punch you in the fucking face.
That's
I
right.
just had to get it out. So I just text you back with an emoji, LOL, laughing face. And I said, I love your spiciness. I will make it up tonight. And I send you a heart.
Well, I didn't get that one. I would have been like, okay, fine.
But
I had to
see, that's in the past, that would have created a fight because then
Yes.
for me, it would have been like, what the fuck? I'm doing all these things.
And then for me too.
And it would trigger.
And for me
it
too,
would trigger
because
that. I think that it would trigger that not being enoughness. Like as a man, I think there's those little things, those little daggers, right?
Yes.
And listen, it's just a pattern that we have to go through
Yes.
as we continue to really be aware of ourselves and what the patterns that trigger us to overreact.
right. And then at the same time, it's like allow yourself to speak your truth, because it's like for me that was my truth at the moment. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just trying to tell you like, hey, this is important for me. Please have the water for me all the time, because it's the only thing that I'm really asking for. Not that's like it's the only thing that you do here in the house. I'm not saying it like that, but I'm saying like, can you take care of me?
That's what Abigail thinks.
Right.
Abigail says that the only thing Daddy does in the house
water,
is
put
the
the water
water,
in the
is the
jug.
refill water.
But can you take care of me? Can you make me feel that I'm seen and heard and loved, and you love me more than I could ever imagine? I know, but have that water for me. So like
and
that's
it's just so crazy that like we always judge people. Like we know that people love us, we know all these things, but then
Yes,
if
I
they
do.
don't do one thing,
Yes.
then everything else in 20 plus years or whatever it is comes crumbling down. And it's just, that is the illusion in the mind. Illusion of the mind of not being heard, not being seen. But
Yeah.
that goes to number 3, which is everything is feedback.
yes.
Like if you start looking at life is giving you feedback, your partner's giving you feedback, and
don't
maybe
take it
the
personal, right?
criticism is feedback. And if you don't like the way your partner is telling you, then you have to communicate. Say, listen, I don't like for you to belittle me. I don't like for you to talk to me this way, or this is how it makes me feel. Like, how can we give each other the feedback without offending each other, or without really
Yes.
hurting each other or putting ourselves down? And I think that's where
And I would also say like the tone of voice, because like I know sometimes like when you pick up your tone of voice just like an inch higher, then I already feel like, and this is just for like the feminine, how we feel. It's like, oh, someone or something is coming to attack me because it's, your voice is raising, and maybe it has nothing even to do with you, but it has to do with like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I see
like
it. I see the difference. Like when I call Alejandro, like when I come home, or when I talk to him, I said, Alejandro, and then he comes in and he gives me a hug, right? But when I call Abigail and I'm not yelling, but I raise my
Scream,
voice,
yeah.
and then she comes like, what I do wrong, Dad?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Like,
no,
what
babe,
happened?
there's
What
nothing. I just want to
happened?
hug you. I want to see
Yeah.
where you are. And,
A
and
tone
I
of
think
voice
the
is a
feminine
lot.
energy sees that sound and that voice as like danger or
Yeah.
warning or something that they're wrong. And it's, again, the conditioning, because if you look, I mean, I love my little girl, and it's not like I'm coming home and screaming like, where I haven't done
Never, no.
never. But in her mind, that's already, she feels like if a man raises his voice, that means something is wrong.
I think that has a lot to do with our primal instinct, like from, I know Allison Armstrong does a great job explaining this, the hunting and the gathering operating systems. And it's like, we are the gatherers. So it's like, we're looking, our senses are scanning, and our hearing is like for everything that's happening different. So if you're raising your voice, that means like something has to be wrong. Something is going to happen. So automatically it's like our primal instinct that comes through.
So it's key for women and men, for power couples to come together to be able to give feedback with each other.
Yes.
Constructive criticism needs to happen in order for you to grow. You need to give each other feedback. I'm telling you many times, like, give me feedback. I need you to tell me. Like,
Yes.
I'm not, don't sugarcoat the things that I'm doing. I love when you give me feedback. Even when you send me emojis, like, I'm going to punch you in the fucking face. Great. I know I could take it, right?
Right.
But you need to be able to have that communication with your partner. You need to be able to take the feedback. I don't take it personal, because that's just the way that your partner is feeling at a time.
Yeah.
Second, pick your battles to make sure that you are not overreacting or exploding over
Take the
little
time
things.
to think it through. I think you definitely need to know, like, is this something that I'm fighting for, that it makes sense for me to fight? Or is it because I'm fighting that I feel something in myself that
Is there
I'm
a
not
bigger,
enough?
bigger
or
problem?
whatever
Is there a
feeling?
bigger
Yes.
issue?
Yes.
Because most of the time we're fighting about something that has nothing to do with the situation.
Right.
Has to do with something that is is already stacking up.
Yes.
And the third is, realize that everything is feedback, that your partner is giving you feedback, life is giving you feedback, God is giving you feedback, the market is giving you feedback so you could grow and level up.
I was just going to say that's just for growth. It's just for our own personal growth. And I think that the more that we grow, there's a bigger capacity for us to love. There's a bigger capacity for us to like really understand each other. At the end of the day, that's what we want, is to be able to love and understand each other in our relationship.
And that's what we asking all the time.
Right?
We asking God, bless us, God, give us more. And then God is saying, okay, you want more, you need to get stronger. You want more, you need to be able to handle more.
Let me send you a husband so you can test you a little.
Let me send you a wife. Let me send you, challenges. Let me send you this. And that's the way I believe God is constantly increasing our capacity so we could grow and we could actually handle more. Because the reason we don't have more is because we can't handle what we have.
That's right.
So thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, follow us everywhere except for our bedroom, so we keep it private. Thank you, Bev. Thank you for being here and testing me.
Always.
And always helping me grow. Learn it, live it, experience it, love life.